Welcome everybody to the Fanmouth Daily Fantasy Baseball Breakdown for Thursday, May the 1st. I'm Joe Marsh, joined today by Dave Del Grande. How you doing, Dave?
Doing good, thanks.
All right, we have a small slate of games. We're just covering the evening games, the 7 o'clock Eastern Time start games. So there are 6 games we'll be discussing. We'll go through all the positions. We'll tell you who we like. We'll help you build your lineup. Go from there. If you tuned in yesterday, you probably got some good advice. Dave's always good for providing you with some homer picks. So got some good stuff for you as well today. Starting with pitcher. Now, this is not a night where I like a lot of pitchers. Going through all of them, there's reasons not to like all of them. I looked at the top 5 in price. They're all first off pitching on the road. And as you break it down further, there's other things I really don't like. So I'm not getting too excited. I figure I'll just grab the guys with the most strikeouts. So the first one being Irvin Santana. He's facing the Marlins offense, which is a good offense, but he does have a little over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, 1.38 ERA on the road. And the Marlins do strike out a lot, despite being a good offense or fourth most in the league. So Santana's a guy who can get you a lot of strikeouts. Estrada as well. I don't love the matchup, but the K potential, a little over 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. Reds are kind of in the middle of the league in strikeouts and in the bottom third in runs scored. He's got a 2.04 ERA on the road. Another guy I would consider pairing one of them with is Henderson Alvarez. Now, he doesn't have the same strikeout upside as those guys, but he hasn't given up more than 3 runs in any start this season. Facing Atlanta, who's a weak offense, they're 28th in the league in scoring, 6th in the league in Ks. So I may pair one of those guys, possibly Santana, with Alvarez and spend a bit more on hitting tonight. That might be the way I go. That's not a typical strategy I use, but tonight may be the night to do that. Dave, what are you thinking at pitcher?
Well, first off, I agree with you that it does not appear that the real heavyweight pitchers are going tonight. So I think a good idea is don't just spend big money on pitchers just to have the most expensive guy if you don't like the guy, if you don't like the matchup. And I'm like you. I think the 2 best pitchers going tonight based on matchup are 2 of the lower price guys. You mentioned Alvarez. Alvarez has pitched great this year, has done well at home. The Braves are not a good hitting team against right-handed pitchers. He's one of the lowest priced pitchers going tonight. I'm not really sure why. And the other guy, a guy who's pitching even better and facing a team that's even weaker hitting left-handed pitchers, is Burley tonight. He's on the road, yes, but Kansas City's been terrible against left-handed pitchers. Burley's been great this year. You're getting 2 pitchers who are red hot against 2 teams that don't hit this style of pitcher well, and you're getting them both at good prices. So for not a great night for pitchers, I'm very happy to go with those 2 guys.
Yeah, Burley I think is a safe pick, but I think he's also a limited upside pick. The way I'm looking at it, in his last 4 starts, he hasn't struck out more than 3 hitters. The Royals are dead last in the league in strikeouts. So like I said, I think he'll pitch well. I think he'll give you, very few earned runs, maybe 8 innings. But the problem is if he only gets you 3 strikeouts, now depending on the website you're playing on, there's not a whole lot of upside there. So I would give an edge to a guy like Santana or Estrada, who may get hit a little more, but may be able to give you 8 or 9 strikeouts.
Yeah, see, I'm not as big as you are and Jeff are in strikeouts, and that's probably my mistake. But what I am big on is not only pitchers who I think are good matchups, but also pitchers that I think will win. Because with a win, obviously comes some points, but also in general, if your team's ahead, you're going to pitch longer. And those innings or outs, however your site is calculating your points, all add up. I think that, according to my calculations today, I think Toronto, Burley's team is the 2nd most likely team to win tonight, and Miami's the 4th most likely team to win tonight. So I like both of those matchups. I think both those pitchers could pitch deep. Again, like I said before, against teams that don't hit their style of pitching well. So I'll sacrifice the strikeouts, get the couple extra innings, and hopefully get the win.
All right, good stuff there from Dave. A little bit of a differing perspective. Moving on over to catcher. Guy I like a lot tonight is Dioner Navarro. Is on his currently in an 8-game hitting streak. He's got 14 hits over that period. Switch hitter. He'll be hitting lefty against Guthrie. He's hitting 323 from the left side of the plate. Guthrie's given up a 286 average and 4 home runs to lefties. So that's a bit of a matchup that I like. Again, catcher is kind of like pitcher. A lot of the top options I don't really like. Brian McCann's another place you can go. He hasn't been great, but I think the Yankees are going to have some success tonight. What are you thinking?
I agree. I think that the Yankees are one of the top offensive options tonight in terms of the matchup. I want to get 2 or 3, at least 2 or 3 Yankees in the lineup tonight. I think McCann stands out in that group. I'm not really crazy about the rest of the catchers, so I'm going to probably spend a little bit on catching tonight and go with McCann in that matchup.
All right. What are you thinking at first base?
Well, the Rockies are back home tonight. Bartolo Colon's pitching against them. Bartolo Colon's a good pitcher when he can get movement on his pitches. That's one thing that you kind of sacrifice when you pitch at Colorado. Pitchers talk about not getting the snap on their curveballs or the sink on their sinkers. And Colon hasn't pitched that well this year anyway, especially on the road. I think this is a game where he's probably very disappointed. He got rained out yesterday and now has to pitch in Colorado tonight. I like the matchup against Cologne. I'm going to go with Justin Morneau. Has been a really hot hitter lately, left-handed batter against Cologne. I think he's a nice price and a good matchup.
Yeah, a lot of Rockies that I like today. Cologne has a 6.75 ERA on the road, and tonight will be in Coors Field. So a lot of Rockies to target tonight. First base, I'm going with Teixeira, sticking with the Yankees there. He's great against lefties, a 1.083 OPS against lefties. He's got home runs in his last 2 games. He's clearly, back into form. So I think Teixeira is a very solid play tonight. Moving over to second base, who do you have there?
Well, the matchup I like best tonight are the Milwaukee hitters against Homer Bailey. Homer Bailey, even though this game's in Cincinnati, which is actually a better hitter's park than Milwaukee.
Those are both good hitter parks.
Well, right, but Cincinnati is I think is about as good as it gets outside of Colorado. Homer Bailey has been terrible this year. Now, he's not a bad pitcher, but he just doesn't have it going right now, and I'm I'll jump on that bandwagon. I think that Milwaukee, which has been a hot team, goes in there, hot team against a cold pitcher in a hitter's park. I mean, what's not to like about that? I think Milwaukee, to me, rates as the #1 offensive team going tonight. I'm definitely going to have 2 or 3 Milwaukee guys, especially if I can find a guy or two whose price is cheap. Your boy, Scooter Gennett. He keeps doing well. His price continues to be reasonable. I think he's a classic example of a guy who I want in the lineup tonight. He's a brewer who's not going to cost me all that much money. So I think he's I'm very happy to get him in the lineup at his price.
Love that guy. I'm never going to say anything bad about a pick if you pick Jeanette. For me, I'm using Kyle Seager's second base eligibility here, so I can still use Longoria at third base. He's been absolutely on fire. He's got 5 home runs in his last 5 games with 9 hits over that span. All 5 of those homers came off right-handed pitchers, facing Kuroda, who's given up 3 homers to lefties and has a 5.28 ERA on the season. Playing in Yankee Stadium with the short porch and right. I picked Seager as my home run pick. After I did, I reconsidered. I'm like, man, should I have an easy pick like Longoria or Gonzalez? But you know what? I'm 0 for 11, 0 for 12, something like that. What's the worst that could happen? So I pick wrong again. So Kyle Seager, that's my home run pick today.
Well, speaking of home run picks, I'm going to throw up the inquiry flag here over last night. My guy got rained out. That counts against me?
That doesn't count against you, no. If your player gets rained out or is not in the lineup that day, it's a 0 for 0. That doesn't count as a missed pick.
You've run this by the boss.
The powers that be have sanctioned that. Yes.
Okay, that's good. My batting average back up to 300 then.
All right.
I like that, and I do like the Seager pick as well. In fact, I didn't even consider him at second base eligible. I looked at him at third base where I like somebody else like you do. So I thought, I wish I could get him in the lineup because he's been hitting well. He's got a nice price, but I like someone a little better at third. That's, you opened my eyes there. Maybe I'll consider him at second base because you're right. He's
Well,
been red hot.
yeah, we talked about this a bit yesterday once we were done with the show, is the eligibility, because I had picked Billy Hamilton at shortstop, and you said, why in the world is Billy Hamilton a shortstop? So I went back and looked. He's never played a major league game at shortstop. He's played in the minors at shortstop, but only in the outfield in the majors. But, if the site's going to give you eligibility, let you replace a middle infielder with an outfielder, why not take advantage of whatever the site's rules are? You're just working to your own advantage there.
Oh, I agree. And that same thing happens at catcher. I mean, where you can get like a Mike Napoli.
Yeah.
Who used
to Carlos Santana qualifies at catcher.
Right, right. And these guys who used to be catchers or caught a couple of games last year, you can get Napoli, a slugging first baseman, and get him as a catcher. Man, you're stealing money there.
Yeah, so you may see that sometimes on our rankings that you're like, well, this guy doesn't play that position. Well, if the website gives you eligibility at that position, and you're putting a third baseman at second base, an outfielder at second base, like you said, a first baseman at catcher, take advantage of that. That's just making your life a bit easier. Moving on over to third base, who do you have here?
Well, I'm going with David Wright at third base.
Really?
Well, he hasn't hit well. But the Coors Field factor, I think can wake him up. He's obviously a much better hitter than he's done so far this year. Nicasio's pitching tonight for Colorado, less than average pitcher in my opinion. I'm not only going with Wright here as my third baseman, but I'm going to take a shot with him as my home run. He's kind of an all or nothing kind of guy. I'll take a shot with him as my home run pick of the day as well as a third baseman. So, it's a risky pick. He's one of those guys that a month from now, his batting average is going to be up, his home runs and RBIs are going to be up, and he's going to be maybe too expensive to play. I'll try to catch him now while his price is below what it should be.
I think that's a good pick. I was just surprised because yesterday you had Longoria, which is also the same guy that I have. And then it's the same matchup. They're just playing, making up that game today.
Well, I can explain this.
Okay.
I stay clear of doubleheaders as much as possible. I think they're very, very risky because you don't really know who's going to play the second game. You don't know. First off, you always get guys who are tired, and you don't really know who's going to start the second game, what might have happened to him the first game. Teams that win the first game tend to rest some guys. Teams that lose, so there's just too many variables there, especially when, and this is not the case in the Boston game tonight, but especially when the teams pitch the same-handed pitcher both games. Because when they do that, they prevent the other team from platooning. Or if they do platoon, you're platooning against, not in the ideal situation. So it's like, you know what? When I see a right-hander pitch in one game, a left-hander pitch in the second game, I'm more likely to take a chance on something like that. But, when in doubt, I say stay clear of doubleheaders.
Okay. I don't necessarily subscribe to the same philosophy. I mean, like you said, there are a lot of variables. One of those being, the bullpen could be worn out in the first game, could benefit the player playing in the later game. So, I'm sticking with Longoria, crushing left-handed pitching, facing a weak lefty in Dubront. Last season, he had a 949 OPS against lefties. So I'm getting Longoria out there. I still think he's a great play. There are a couple that I like in the outfield as well. We'll get to that. But moving over to shortstop, obviously Tulowitzki's the obvious name. Not going to give you much more on him. He's hitting at home. If you've got the money, get Tulowitzki in your lineup. A guy I like, again, using his shortstop eligibility is Billy Hamilton. Talked about him yesterday. Recommended him because he was facing Castillo, stole a base. And now today he's facing Jonathan Lucroy, who doesn't throw out runners that well either. He's thrown out, 4 of 19 base stealers, sort of near the bottom in the league. He's got a righty on the mound in Estrada. and he's starting to get on base more, which is only giving him opportunities to run more, So anytime he's on base, look for him to steal, suddenly turning, your 2-point hit into a 7 points, with the added points for stolen bases and the opportunity to score runs, which is almost exactly what he did yesterday. So Hamilton's a guy I like tonight. How about you?
Well, like you said, I think you've got to try to play Tulowitzki. I mentioned this yesterday, and they weren't even at home yesterday. The guy is hitting home runs almost every day, driving in runs, scoring runs. I mean, he's just the hottest hitter going right now. Yes, he's expensive, but on a day like today where I'm not going with the real heavyweight pitchers, it gives me an opportunity to play him. Almost for sure he'll be in my lineup tonight against Cologne.
All right. I noticed on your rankings you had Derek Jeter. I was considering him because there's a huge drop from the first 7 or 8 shortstops in price all the way down to Jeter. I think that's a great pick against a left-handed pitcher. Just, Jeff pretty much, he's hooked me up to this machine that shocks me if I ever try to pick Derek Jeter on here. So that's why I skipped him and went with Hamilton. But Jeter, I think, is a solid play as well.
Well,
I think that every day.
if I weren't already rolling the dice with David Wright, who's having a similar kind of season as Jeter, neither one of them has done anything yet. I expect both of them before too long to start getting closer to what they normally do, especially Wright, who obviously is a far younger player. But it's like, you know what, I'll take a chance with one of those veteran guys. Going with a second guy, I really don't need to do that. So I do like, if I can't fit Tulowitzki into the lineup, and I got to consider a guy like Jeter, like I mentioned before. I think the Yankees, and I said this yesterday too, it was the same matchup. I think the Yankees are going to score a ton of runs, but there's also another rain factor again tonight in New York. So that's another issue.
I think we're somewhat clear on the weather. Obviously it's not an exact science. I think the Dodgers in Minnesota maybe have a little rain, but I think across the rest of the league it should be all right. Obviously, always double check the weather reports closer to game time because a lot can change. And then moving on to the outfield, I got 6 players, but only from 3 teams here. From the Rockies, I got Blackmon and Gonzalez. Blackmon hits .478 at Coors Field. I already mentioned Cologne has a 6.75 ERA on the road. At home, Blackmon's got a 1.423 OPS, and all 5 of his home runs have come at home. If you've got the money, go Blackmon. Gonzalez, another solid pick. From the Yankees, I've got Soriano, always going to start him against lefty, and Jacoby Ellsbury. He's hitting .410 this season against lefties. And then a couple of Rays that I like. Ben Zobrist has a 934 OPS this year against lefties, facing Dubront, who's really been struggling. Ben Zobrist, last 10 games, has had 7 multi-hit games, so I think he's got an opportunity to do some damage. And then Will Myers is another guy who, he hasn't been great this year, but when there's a lefty on the hill, he hits right in front of Ryan Braun. Typically they bat him 3. So I think, against Dubront, who's not, who hasn't been that good, like I mentioned, I think he's got a chance to do some damage in the 3-hole. What are you thinking in the outfield?
Well, I agree with you that on one thing, and that is there are 3 teams tonight that I think are set up to have big offensive nights, and all of them have powerful outfielders, or high-scoring outfielders anyway. And I would concentrate my lineup on those 3 guys. You mentioned 2 of the 3 that I like. One being the Yankees. I think Soriano's a must-play tonight, and I do like your Ellsbury play as well. The second one is Colorado. Colorado. I think Gonzalez, he's another one of these guys who hasn't had a great start to the season yet, but I like him tonight against Cologne. You can go with Dickerson tonight if you want to save a little money there. He's done very well. And, of course, Blackmon, who's got a high price but has done very well as well. But my third choice, instead of being Tampa, which is playing the doubleheader, I already talked about that, is Milwaukee. I mentioned them earlier. I think Milwaukee is the team most likely to score the most runs tonight. They're certainly facing the pitcher who's done the worst so far, and that's Homer Bailey, which to me puts Braun definitely in play, and Carlos Gomez right behind him. So there's a lot of high-priced guys there, I understand, but As I said, I'm saving some money on pitcher. I'm hoping to get maybe 2 high-priced outfielders going. I would say the 2 guys that I like the best would be Braun and Soriano. Carlos Gonzalez isn't far behind. I think that if I'm looking to save some money there, Dickerson, like I said, is a good choice. If I were going to play someone from a doubleheader today and needed to save money, and I'll check the lineup on this, but the Dodgers are facing a right-hander in the first game today, and will face a left-hander in the second game. They aren't playing Kemp in the first game of the doubleheader. They aren't playing Van Slyke either. And Van Slyke hits left-handers very well. I'm expecting to see him in the second game. They're facing Chris Johnson in that second game tonight. If Van Slyke is in the lineup, and at a very reasonable price, he might be a guy he and Dickerson would be 2 guys to reach for in good matchups in the outfield if you need to save the money.
Okay, just to clean that up, they are playing Kemp in the first game. He's DHing tonight.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
the other thing, too, on Braun, I would check the report because last I heard he's not going to be playing today. But like you said, I mean, I think the Brewers are still good picks. I think if you can get Gomez or Chris Davis in there, although check it later on, he may be he may be playing. I'd wait till the lineups come out before you do that. Go ahead and do our final words. I think Dave and I agree that today's not a day to spend a lot on pitching. I would go for, maybe one expensive guy between Estrada and Santana paired with Alvarez, maybe not even one expensive guy, and just focus on bats. Try to get guys like, if you can do Tulowitzki and a Longoria, maybe a high-priced outfielder, there's some good options. Blackman's a great option. Soriano, I think we both agree, is a great play. I don't think you need to spend a ton at pitcher tonight, though. I just don't think tonight is the night to do that. Kyle Seager's a guy I really like a lot. He's been absolutely on fire, and his price is definitely reflecting that. So it will cost you a bit to have him in your lineup tonight. Dave, final word.
Well, first off, I took your advice yesterday, especially on a couple of the A's guys, Derek Norris in particular, that you mentioned, and it paid off big time for me. So I'm listening. I've penciled in Kyle Seager, whether it's at second base or third base or utility. He's someone who I'm definitely going to try to get in there. And we are in lockstep regarding the pitchers. I happen to like Burley tonight, but he's similar to the guys you're talking about. He's not a high-priced pitcher. Alvarez is among the lowest-priced pitchers for, God knows what reason. He's pitched very well this year. And you'd be surprised. I mean, to me, the pitcher position is the most important in that it dictates the rest of your lineup. If you play low-priced pitchers, and I don't suggest forcing that, but on a day like today where I happen to like, regardless of the price, I think Burley and Alvarez are 2 of the top 3 pitchers going tonight, and I'm able to save money on them. And this sets up the rest of my lineup to allow me to play an extra 2 or 3 real good sluggers that maybe I don't usually get to play. So, you mentioned Braun possibly not playing tonight. That's someone who I would definitely check on. And if he's out, I'll just put Carlos Gomez right in there for him against Homer Bailey. So I'm looking to spend some big money on hitters tonight. There are not a lot of games, but I do like some of these matchups I mentioned. The Brewers tonight against Bailey, the Rockies tonight against Cologne, and then the Yankees also tonight. And that's I think if you focus your offense on those 3 teams, you're going to do very well.
All right, great stuff there from Dave. That wraps it up for us today. Dave and I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at PlayFanmouth. You can also check out the rest of our rankings at blog.fanmouth.com. We will see you tomorrow.